first presenter in this segment is Emily Gold LaGratta. She's the Deputy Director at the Center for Court Innovation here in Brooklyn. She is in particular the Deputy Director of Training and Technical Assistance at the Center, and she provides consulting services to promote the use of problem-solving practices to reduce crime and incarceration while strengthening public trust in justice. She has served as a project manager for the Improving Courtroom Communications Project, and she was also on the planning team for several New York-based initiatives, including the Brownsville Community Justice Center, a new community court to be opened in central Brooklyn. I'll introduce our other two panelists in the criminal justice segment as soon as Emily has a chance to present her material. Please welcome Emily.
Good afternoon, everyone. It feels appropriate, filling in for Greg, that he had set aside time to watch a little video. So as your substitute teacher, there will be a video today, but I thought I'd provide some just kind of contextual remarks before we see that, and before we hear from my fellow co-panelists. So for those of you who don't know, the Center for Court Innovation is a nonprofit based here in New York, just a few blocks away. It's kind of a unique institution. We have three main spheres. One is a research arm, where we have some couple dozen social scientists who serve as both independent evaluators, and they also advise us in evaluating our own work. We also design and implement operating programs right here in New York City and nearby across in New Jersey and around the state. And so the video actually will zero in on one of those operating programs, which I hope will feel relevant to this topic today. And then the third arm is kind of a consulting shop or a technical assistance department, which I work for. And so really at the intersection of all three of those spheres is this idea of community justice and problem solving. And so I think the idea of community justice came out of our early work designing operating programs here in the city back in the mid-90s. And the hypothesis that we were aiming to test then, and I think still, is whether you can simultaneously increase public trust and confidence in justice while also increasing public safety. And I think some of the mechanisms that we've landed upon that seem to work are why we were invited to speak today with you all. So I think at the core, what we've seen in practice and also what we've seen coming out of the research literature is that it's fairly undisputed at this point that what people really want, and that's people, you and I, and that's also people coming through the justice system, is they want to be treated fairly. And that may seem overly simplistic, and simplicity is alluring. But the research is quite clear. And so us lawyers, and I'm guilty of this, us lawyers, I think, seem to think that outcome is most important. But we've really felt convinced through, again, our practice and the research that there's something to this fair treatment that is more instrumental in really driving compliance and even reducing future offending. So the video you're about to see, it's a short clip taken that was developed to highlight the work of our Red Hook Community Justice Center, which is across the way in Red Hook, Brooklyn. If you visited Red Hook years ago, you would have a very different impression of it now. It's a quite desirable place. And so some things I'd love you to keep an eye out for as you watch the clip. So one is kind of looking at the role of community. And there's several ways that I think that will come through. Things like staffing, things like even just site selection. When you're designing a project, what role does the community have? And then the other is looking at physical space and kind of the built environment. And how can messaging come through in an actual kind of architecture or in signage and things like that? So I think at this point, before I waste more minutes, let's go ahead and cue the video.
back in the 80s, there was a Life magazine article on Red Hook. It was called the most dangerous place in America, and it was at one point. It destroyed this community.
I definitely grew up in the 80s, which is what they consider kind of like the crack era in Red Hook. And I remember like my mom, like, no, we're not going outside. I'm not gonna let you do that.
December 17th, 1992, that was the day that Patrick Daly, our local school principal, was murdered. He got caught in a crossfire between two drug gangs and was killed. It put Red Hook on the map as a drug-ridden urban war zone and brought a number of agencies together who said, we need changes here.
From the very beginning, there was community input in the Justice Center. And the way that we selected the Justice Center is we filled a bus with community leaders and community residents and went to 7 different possible locations. And this ultimately was the site that they chose. It's a former parochial school. It had been abandoned effectively for 20 years.
A court was created that really, really cares for the community, cares for the clients, and actually makes a difference in so many of our clients' lives.
PM call. Mr. Wallen, this is really a good update. And you've been working steadily for 2 months, and that kind of shows you that you can get clean and you can work at a job and you can work there for months at a time, show up regularly. I mean, that's great. It's great stuff for you. It's great to see. The first decision I have to make is protecting the community safety. But once I'm satisfied about that issue, then we can really look at the person and say, what does this person need to get his or her life back on track?
Sometimes Arison's recommendation will involve community service and writing a letter of apology to the victim, and then a class. We also do long-term mandates, which more often than not involves intensive drug treatment.
I ended up at Red Hook Community Justice Center because I was on drugs, and the judge offered to send me to rehab. I never thought I was going to change my life, and now I've been clean for a little over 18 months.
What Pauline knew from the beginning is that we wanted her to be successful. So while there are times that she had missteps, she always knew as a bottom line, we were here to support her.
You know, they treated me like a person. Even the staff downstairs in the holding cell, they were nice.
You know, I've been doing jail all my life, so at this point, it was easy to go to jail. That was the easy thing, but come here, it wasn't easy. It was hard, I was sentenced to do residential treatment and trauma-focused therapy, and it helped me, take a look at some of the circumstances that happened in my life and using drugs to cover up the pain and the bad feelings. I have changed a lot, immensely. I will be graduating with an associate's degree in chemical dependency, and plan on going to Hunter College and get my bachelor's in social work.
Our courtroom is set up so that the judge is not looking down on defendants or complainants or respondents. They are at eye level. They are able to approach the judge. They're able to approach anyone in here with a question or a problem, and they get treated the way we want to be treated.
Look, you put in all the work at the detox and the rehab. You're doing what you need to do at that point, and it's just a question of using the outpatient, both drug and mental health, to get back on track.
They're definitely interested in the community. This judge from the top down are excellent. You know what I mean? Their mannerisms, their behavior, their caring is totally different than anything I ever came in contact with in my entire life.
Each individual defendant, victim, community member needs to be treated with dignity and respect and needs to be communicated with in plain language about what's going on in court. And that's something that the Justice Center has hardwired into its DNA, and that a message that you receive from the Justice Center as soon as you come in the door.
I'm just reminding you, there was the first time we saw you after you had been in treatment for a significant period of time, no one in the courtroom recognized you. That's how far you've come.
I know.
Your progress is amazing. We give you the opportunity, you do the work.
Thank you
You've done
so
a lot
much.
of great work. Congratulations.
We've seen examples, unfortunately, around the country of protests of folks who have lost confidence in their criminal justice system. Red Hook is doing the exact opposite. It's building a trust between law enforcement and the community, and a vital partnership that we need.
We are at the Red Hook Justice Center, and I have to tell you, for years, I've gotten to know the work of this extraordinary institution. It epitomizes what I believe in terms of progressive approach to public safety, to bringing community and public safety professionals together to keep us all safe.
The Red Hook Community Justice Center has made a number of important contributions to the New York State court system, and really beyond as well. And I think its primary contribution has been to serve as a laboratory for new ideas, as a place where you can go to test important questions about justice. Can a court reach out to a community, engage it in the process of doing justice? Can a court treat individual defendants with dignity and respect? Is it possible to come up with new and more meaningful alternatives to incarceration? People have heard about the Red Hook Community Justice Center. They've heard about some interesting thing that's happening there, and they've been inspired to not necessarily replicate that in a cookie cutter model, but to take that idea and run with that.
What we're looking to do is take many of those what people consider low-level crimes, but crimes that have a deep and difficult impact on the community, and really seeing that often this person, if you look at them in a holistic sense, there's things that you can do and intervene with them to create a much better outcome, a sort of a restorative justice, and emphasis on the restorative. I mean, not only are they restoring the community, but you're helping to restore the strength of a person to make better choices.
Place I used to see it before Justice Center. The difference between since 2000 and now, that's huge difference. The Justice Center, since they came over here, safer for the public, better for everybody, for the businesses and everything.
It's good to see that the neighborhood's changed. It's nice. Parks Department is involved, putting trees everywhere. It's good, and we have a good feeling.
After changes that I see and hearing about the Justice Center, I came back and really, I got pleased. But before that, no. Before 2000, if you could give it to me for free, I will not take it.
Born and raised in Red Hook, for me, I'm proud. I come from a neighborhood that had a lot of stigma back in the day. And now, with the Justice Center here and making it so different, along with other community-based organizations, it has definitely changed for the better.
The changes in Red Hook itself have been drastic and significant. I think that the community courts are now going to be seen as the way to address some of the significant and substantial issues there are across this country, with results that are better for the community, better for the police, better for the court system, better for offenders, and most of all, better for victims.
We're just rebuilding this community. We're going through a renaissance period here now.
If I hadn't come to Red Hook, I would be in prison. No doubt about it. Or dead.
I went to school for human services assistants, and I'm currently doing an internship. I'm on the other side of the desk now. I'm not the client, I'm the person helping someone, and it feels really good. I'm so grateful that, for whatever reason, I would come here to the Red Hook Community Justice Center. It saved my life.
Just watching this again for the umpteenth time, some of the words that came out in the past two presentations kind of jumped out at me, words like empathy and compassion. And I think that's really behind it, as projects like this have really tried to humanize the justice process. And so in asking us to really look at kind of role of community, I think the punchline is that right from day one, a project like this was really designed by and for the community. So whether it's kind of packing a bus of community members to drive around a neighborhood and have them help pick where this new justice institution would be, and ensuring that the site that was selected was a place of civic importance, right? So that you could kind of rewrite the narrative of the neighborhood. And infuse that community with something positive as opposed to kind of this constant negative association with the justice system and possibly even government more broadly. Things like hiring, staffing a place with the community so you have this kind of constant infusion and ensuring that you're kind of blurring the lines between community and agency because the community is the Justice Center and vice versa. I love the example of letters of apology. I think often we kind of pass right over that as, oh, that sounds nice. But it's another way that there's kind of this feedback loop, right? Where offenders, people coming through the justice system, through the back door, so to speak, are able to kind of have their voice go back out to their neighbors and directly address the wrongs that they may have done, but their efforts to really want to reintegrate into that community be welcomed back. And there are other things, ongoing surveys, community meetings, et cetera, that I think help complete that feedback loop. Other things about physical space, I know it was mentioned, the kind of figurative and literal, the judge seeing eye to eye with people before him. Those are just kind of architecture questions that I think either aren't asked maybe in other projects, or maybe we assume that in order to have authority, a judge needs to be speaking up from on high in her black robe and with the gavel. But really, I think by bringing the judge down and allowing that interaction to take place, whether it's a handshake or even just kind of bringing those parties on equal footing, seems to really be part of the secret sauce that has gotten the Red Hook Justice Center the results that were outlined there. So I'll wrap up because I want to make sure that my fellow panelists have time. But I guess wanted to highlight a couple of other things. So one, all of those incredible outcomes that the video highlights, it was conducted as part of an independent evaluation. And at the end, the evaluator said, yes, people are getting these great, they're getting drug treatment and they're getting connection to other services. But really what we think is most impactful is the relationship that litigants or defendants have with the judge. So kind of that bond, that public trust that they're developing, which is a pretty profound thing if you think about it. Which leads me to the second point, which is that, I think, obviously we're huge advocates of spreading this idea and model of community courts. But if you really boil it down, this idea of building community and building relationships between justice system actors and the folks that they serve, that can happen in any setting. So you don't need a fancy justice center necessarily to have that happen. And I know at least one of my fellow panelists is going to talk to that idea, but I think these ideas of building public trust and humanizing the experience, those are things that we're working to identify. How is that happening in traditional court settings, for example? So just as some examples, one thing we're working on here locally in New York, court date reminders, right? How do you get people to show up for their court dates? Sending them some type of court date reminder, that's kind of maybe level 1. But if we get to 2.0, does it matter how that language is phrased? And does it matter what the mechanism is? Is a postcard different than a text message, or different than a robocall, or different than a human calling them? These are questions that I think if we could test out, we might get better at some pretty fundamental functions of the justice system. And then beyond New York, we're involved in a pretty exciting project where we're traveling the country and kind of mining other justice systems for promising practices in this arena. Just a couple of examples to highlight. There's one jurisdiction that actually has baked into their judicial performance evaluation system these ideas of public trust and confidence, right? So imagine judges being graded on how well they interact with litigants. Other ways of kind of using technology to improve help desks in courts. So the examples abound, and we're very honored to be able to highlight them. So anyway, look forward to your questions after our panelists. Thank you.